if you talk about this year, you're right. They bought 800 tons so far in the first 9 months of the year. That's up 14% year over year. Last year being the biggest year on record, and now it's up another 14%. And I think, in short, we're on the verge of this shift from in international finance, and gold is going to replace the treasuries, I think, as the premier store of value, and it is happening.
In this segment, Andy Schectman discusses central banks' manipulation and accumulation of gold prices, asserting that Western suppression has served as a strategic cover for substantial gold accumulation since around 2017 or 2018. Notably, he highlights the pivotal repatriation efforts of central banks, especially in 2018, when these entities collectively procured more gold than in the preceding 6 decades. Schectman notes a shift in historical perspectives on government treasuries, contributing to the resurgence of gold as the premier store of value. This trend extends globally, with active participation from major central banks, including those of China, India, and European nations, hinting at a potential paradigm shift in international finance. A key element in Schectman's narrative is the role of Western paper market suppression, enabling major financial players to amass physical gold while manipulating the market through short positions on paper, empowering Eastern nations to capitalize on suppressed Western markets. Schectman envisions a future where weakened Western paper markets allow the rest of the world to extract precious metals, leading to the establishment of a new benchmark, potentially in financial hubs like Abu Dhabi, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, or the Moscow Metals Exchange, resulting in scarcity defining physical metals in the West and fundamentally reshaping the global precious metals market. Let's dive into his thesis. Also, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and drop your comments below.
I think that's why they've used the Western suppression to run cover for their accumulation, which I would argue has been going on at least since 2017 or 18, when you saw the repatriation by the central banks from the New York Fed and the Bank of England, starting with the Bundesbank. And in 2018, all of a sudden, those banks bought more gold that year than they did in the 60 years previously combined. That would be like the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Hungary, Turkey, the Czech National Bank. All of these countries have been on a buying spree, many others on a buying spree, of course, China and India and all of those. But look, let's just, again, like I said earlier, from a historical point of view, using government treasuries and bonds as a savings vehicle is a relatively new concept in the historical context. And I think it's fading. And I think that already the elite have rediscovered gold is and has always been the premier store of value. And I think it's happening in a big way. And as you mentioned, last year, the central banks bought 37 million ounces of gold, a multi-decade record. Over the last 18 months, they bought more than in any time in history. And, so if you talk about this year, you're right. They bought 800 tons so far in the first 9 months of the year. That's up 14% year over year. Last year being the biggest year on record, and now it's up another 14%. And I think, in short, we're on the verge of this shift from in international finance, and gold is going to replace the treasuries, I think, as the premier store of value. And it is happening. And at the same time, these central banks not only have been voraciously accumulating it while using the suppression of the Western paper market to run cover, where you have 35 times leverage and you can short the market on paper and buy the physical without really the whole world jumping into it because of the price going to the moon and attracting attention. In fact, quite to the opposite. The counterintuitive price action and the suppression of the market has enabled these big players to front run what is ultimately going to happen. And I don't think we've begun to really see anything yet as far as that is concerned. These traders are always way ahead of the curve. And when it breaks when there just isn't any ability for the Western suppressed markets to suppress in a naked fashion. In other words, it will be far too dangerous to sell short. Let me say what I mean by naked. Right now in silver, as an example, there is 1,700% more paper contracts than there are bars backing those contracts. In other words, it's rehypothecated 17 times. And so if for every one real contract that could be delivered in physical form, 16 won't be, or 17 won't be. You get paper settled, it is rehypothecated. And that's why we're already beginning to see in China, as an example, the Shanghai Gold Exchange has gold price, last I looked, at about $100 higher than the LBMA or the COMEX price. I don't care what these economists tell you is the justification. In my mind, they are trying to arbitrage slowly whatever is not nailed down. And they've already done a good job at pulling stuff out of the COMEX, out of the LBMA. They're pulling the physical commodities, not just gold and silver. You're seeing the industrial metals too, aluminum and zinc and copper. They're all being accumulated by these nations, and they're using the suppression of the Western markets to do it. At the same time, they're selling treasuries. So if anyone wonders why the treasury market experienced its worst year ever, and the yields keep rising and the back end of the curve keeps rising, because they're all dumping their long treasuries. And even at a loss, I think they would rather sell them and shift and transition to gold before things get really dirty. So yes, I think that what we will ultimately witness is a moment in time where the rehypothecated levered Western paper markets will enable the rest of the world to siphon everything out of the weak hands of the West, and it will all move eastward. And when all of the metal is there, or the majority of it, where the Western markets are rendered neutered or a scam because of their hypothecated model, then you will see other parts of the world establish a more reliable and credible benchmark, whether it be in Abu Dhabi or the Shanghai Gold Exchange or the Moscow Metals Exchange. It will be that portion of the world, those who have been accumulating it all, who produce it all, who understand what it really means. They're going to say, we don't want to buy from your Western system anymore, and we don't believe in your Western system anymore. And in fact, we are going to implement our own system. And, you know, you can see how banks will arbitrage for a few cents a share millions and millions and millions of dollars. Well, how about $100 an ounce? How about putting silver at $50 and watch what happens to all the silver over here that immediately arbitrages over there in a one-time shot to make these bankers very wealthy. And now we have stripped clean all of the physical silver and gold that will be available that would have been available for the people in this country who will wake up last minute and say, whoa, geez, I better get something. And it will define this market, the inability to source product on every level. And that's when the price goes parabolic. That is when the levered paper price on the COMEX, which currently is over 30 times leverage, where all it takes for a company like me to control 100 ounces of gold on COMEX is $7,000 in my margin account. Well, what if I have 500 million in my margin account like JP Morgan? Well, I can control 30 billion in gold futures. Do you think I can control the direction of the market or create a perception of reality? What if I'm told by the government, listen, we want you to do this. We want to, keep the bond market stable, keep the dollar stable. We need to accumulate some silver. We need it for all of these things. And we've sold most of our silver. So let's just, go ahead, short the hell out of it. You're not going to get in trouble, even though it's illegal, even though it's concentrated and we're telling you to do it. And violation of antitrust law or whatever it may be. Look, JP Morgan, when they paid this fine, well, what about JP Morgan? They got in trouble. Sure they did, right? They got 3 people in jail on very, very short jail sentences. They were brought up on RICO charges. No, they just got spoofing instead. They were fined $920 million. Well, that's the largest fine that the Treasury or that the Justice Department ever handed out at that time. Yes, it is, but their metals desk made $1 billion that year. They walk away up $80 million, and they're still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust, amongst others, SLV. So when you talk about perhaps this is being kind of looked the other way by the authorities, allowing these banks to hold down the price of gold and silver because what it represents to a dollar and a bond market that are rehypothecated, that are showing the signs of fragility in the system, they've been able to do that for a long time. But the problem is when they started doing this, you didn't have half of the world with the wherewithal or the understanding or the demand to siphon all of these commodities at subsidized prices. Go ahead, suppress it. We're going to stand for delivery. So yes, it will ultimately be The defining characteristic of this market, not only will it be much higher prices, it will be that the majority of what is available is on the other side of the globe and it ain't ever coming back.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the intricate dynamics of gold markets with Andy Schectman. We delved into the complex world of central banks manipulating and accumulating gold prices. Schectman highlighted how Western suppression has strategically masked substantial gold accumulation since 2017 or 2018, notably through the repatriation efforts of central banks. This surge peaked in 2018, surpassing gold acquisitions of the previous 60 years. The evolving historical perspective on government treasuries as a savings vehicle is fueling the resurgence of gold as the premier store of value, with global central banks, including China and India, actively acquiring significant amounts of the precious metal. Schectman predicts an impending paradigm shift in international finance, where gold may replace treasuries as the primary store of value. The role of Western paper market suppression allows major players to accumulate physical gold while manipulating the market on paper. Looking forward, Schectman envisions weakened Western paper markets, enabling the rest of the world to extract precious metals, possibly leading to a new benchmark establishment in financial hubs. He concludes that this transition may result in a scarcity of physical metals in the West, causing prices to go parabolic and fundamentally reshaping the global precious metals market.